So once again, a big thanks and welcome for joining us today at this very special 150th session of Leadership Talks. As you know that these sessions are being organized by India International Education Council and School Lalaji Solutions. India International Education Council is a not-for-profit organization which is working in the field of education. It has collaborators from 12 countries. India International Education Council aims to create a better world through education. It is building quality centers for elementary education, approachable for all kids, finding best educational practices across the globe, and find ways to implement those in Indian institutions. It is also creating more awareness on hygiene and learning disabilities. It publishes a magazine called World Education Review and many other educational reports. It aims to build 100 chapters in different cities by 2022. It will soon open its membership for institutions and individuals. It also imparts training for leaders, teachers, students, and parents. As you all know that so far we have conducted 149 sessions. We have received 18,526 registrations, 17,692 questions on national education policy. We have received participation from 7 countries: India, USA, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Nepal, Kuwait, and Russia. From India, we have seen participation from 23 states and 126 cities. We aim to organize minimum 200 sessions. With this, we would be reaching out to 100,000 educators, 20,000 institutions, and 1,000 plus eminent speakers like today's speakers would be joining us to share their perspective and thoughts on national education policy. With this, I would request you all, please join me in welcoming our key speakers for this very special 150th session. Our first key speaker, Anil Gupta ji, a renowned educator, education leader. He's a CEO with the DCM group of schools. Mr. Anil Gupta is a leading edupreneur, an eminent writer and an enthusiastic philanthropist. He's an environmental engineer by qualification and has done his master's in international trade and finance. Mr. Gupta was recently selected for the prestigious BET Asia 2021 Leadership Award, for which he was the only edu leader nominated from India. Mr. Gupta also figured amongst the top 21 edupreneurs transforming education in India. He heads the second chapter of FICCI Arise, which is a collegium of leading stakeholders who represent different facets of school education in India. He also heads the education committee of PhD Chamber of Commerce, Chandigarh region. He has attended several national and international conferences in the field of education in UK, Australia, Finland, UAE, USA, China, France, Japan, and other countries. He regularly speaks at various national, international forums on diverse topics like entrepreneurship skills among children, artificial intelligence, industrial revolution 4.0, school education sector, safety and security in schools, regulation and autonomy, maintaining balance, leadership and teacher development, capacity building, technology, education, among others. We welcome you, Anil sir. Thank you for joining. It's an honor to have you. Our next speaker, another very senior education leader, Dr. Vijay Datta ji. Vijay sir is principal with Modern School, Barakhamba Road, New Delhi. Vijay Datta sir has done BSc, MA in English, MA, PhD Education, GOC in Commendation, President's National Awardee, Shiksha Ratna, has done educational leadership program from University College of London. He has more than 3 decades of experience in a public school circuit. A major part of his was at Mayo College, Ajmer. He was instrumental in bringing the concepts of life skills to the country, besides propagating the idea of emotional intelligence and scientific attitude. Dr. Datta is a member of governing body of CBSE. He is also the vice president of the Delhi Lawn Tennis Association. Under his leadership, Modern School Barakhamba Road was the proud recipient of a Jury's Choice Award, India's best school for exemplary contribution in the field of education. The national award to the principal was conferred to Dr. Vijay Datta in 2016 on behalf of Shri Ramnath Kovind, the President of India. Dr. Datta has been active with Round Square Conference activities for a very long time. He has attended several Round Square Conferences programs, including the Round Square Conference Summit at Cape Town, South Africa. Dr. Datta has been conferred with the prestigious Principal of the Year Award by Indo-British Business Forum, London, at London Parliament on 16 June 2018. We welcome you, Vijay sir. Thank you for joining. It's an honor to have you.
Good afternoon. It's indeed a pleasure to be with you this afternoon.
Welcome, sir. I'll come back to you. Big thanks for joining. Our next key speaker, another very senior education leader, Sujit Khanna ma'am. Sujit ji is founder principal with Delhi Public School, Greater Faridabad, Haryana. Sujit ma'am has been an academician for over 31 years with fulfilling years of shaping young lives through leadership roles at South Campus, Delhi University, Delhi Public School, Noida, and Delhi Public School, Vidyutnagar. He has been a mentor and advisor in setting up several schools, including Delhi Public School, Bikaner, Delhi Public School, Roorkee, Delhi Public School, Khanna, and she is an accomplished resource person with the DPS Society for Teacher Training as well. She is a strong votary of experiential education as the most joyful and productive medium for building happy young lives. Sujit ma'am is strongly leading Delhi Public School, Greater Faridabad to win coveted international national accolades with her team of teachers and students. The many prestigious awards, some of them are like British Council Award for International Dimensions, IDA Award for Tech School of India, KVPY, SMTE and NTSC Awards, Robert Bosch International Research Award, GISA Dubai, and many others. Sujit ma'am is a prolific writer and storyteller. She's a pedagogical innovator and curator of academic and cultural material. She's a well-known motivational speaker as well. Big thanks, Sujit ma'am, for joining. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you very much, Rajul. It's a pleasure to be here.
Welcome, ma'am. Our next key speaker, another senior education leader, Dr. Vidukesh Vimelji. Vidukesh sir is headmaster with the Assam Valley School, Assam. The Vidukesh sir has had a distinguished academic career with the PhD and MPhil from the University of Delhi, a B.Ed from Faculty of Education, Jamia Millia Islamia University, New Delhi. He has an international postgraduate certificate from University College London and a certificate course in Student Residential Care, Australia. He also has a certificate in school management and leadership from Harvard Business and Harvard Graduate School of Education. He's a certified special educator from District Mumbai. Before taking on the role of headmaster at Assam Valley School, Dr. Vimal has spent 14 years at the Doon School, Dehradun, as housemaster of Jaipur House. He's a people's person. He believes in a leadership style that allows one to draw a larger boundary, which flourishes with a sense of ownership. He's a man with deep sense of belonging. He holds firm faith that traditions are elevated to becoming great by the efforts of the people who pursue it. He's an ardent photographer and a theatre enthusiast. Dr. Vimal believes firmly that we all are free to make choices, but are not free from its consequences. At the essence of this belief system as a teacher remains the faith that we must teach our students how to decide what to choose. Welcome you, Vidukesh sir. Thank you for joining. It's an honor to have you. Our next key speaker, another senior education leader, Dr. Pankaj Sharma ji. Pankaj sir is the director with SRM University. He has over 22 years of varied experience in sales and marketing in media, education, FMCG, and IT sectors. He has completed his graduation in electronics honors from Delhi University and received gold medal in his PGDBM. His research topic in PhD was consumer behavior. He has completed a one-year diploma from IIM Lucknow in senior management program, global leadership. He has won many awards and recognition during his corporate journey. He has served at various senior level positions in many prestigious organizations like NIIT University, BMR Munjal University, the Tribune Trust, Dainik Bhaskar Group, Midday, Indian Express, and ST Media Limited. We welcome you, Pankaj sir. Thank you for joining. It's an honor to have you. Our next key speaker, another very senior EdTech leader, Jaswinder Singh ji. Jaswinder ji is founder and CEO of Wordsworth ELT. He has an experience of over 30 years in the field of education and technology and has also served as a consultant to UNESCO on education. Wordsworth English Lab is designed for India and is a highly research initiative of ACT UNIF Group. It is a trusted education company with 2 decades of service in technology, education, and training. Its expertise in technology, multimedia, and content development has been instrumental in presenting a world-class language lab solution for academia in India. In a short span of time, Wordsworth English Language Lab has managed considerable recognition across the country for its unique content and methodology. Over 3,000 installations in institutions across the country stand testimony of the quality in product, implementation, training, and continual service provided by the ACT UNIF and its committed network of dealers. We welcome you, Jaswinder sir. Thank you for joining. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you, Rajul, for having me. Thank you so much.
Welcome, sir. And our last key speaker for this very special session, Mr. Sunil Gangi. Sunil ji is co-founder and CEO of eMango Solutions. He's an IIT graduate from IIT Kanpur. He's having master's degree in mathematics and scientific computing. He's an actuary and also the member with Institute of Actuary, United Kingdom. He has worked with very prestigious institutions like ICICI Prudential, financial risk advisor at Ernst and Young, India and UK. He's an entrepreneur for last 6 years in telecom, food and education sector. He has been doing research on career counseling for last 2 years. Based on that research, they have come up with a wonderful product called eMango, which is a digital career counseling platform. Welcome, Sunilji. Thank you for joining. It's an honor to have you. With this, we come to the next part of the session, which is the opening remark part. I would be inviting one or three speakers for their quick 1 minute opening remark, and after that, I'll invite them again for their main talk. So I would request Anil Gupta sir, sir, if you can have your quick 1 minute opening remark.
Good evening, all of you. I'm happy to be a part of this leadership talk series, and I'm happy to see that we have a lot of interesting topics to deliberate upon. And since last year has been an extremely challenging year for all the stakeholders, for teachers, students, parents, school managements. So it's prudent, for all of us to discuss, brainstorm, and evaluate, what is the way forward. In some states, we can see the schools opening up soon, and in some states the scenario is not so bright. So when it all the schools open, how and what kind of changes have to be brought in the system, what kind of standard operating procedures have to be there, and the topics given to me, about the teaching in 21st century. So we are in the first year of the third decade of 21st century. So what do we expect from teachers? What kind of transformational pedagogies juxtaposed with the technology needs to be, put in place from the leadership perspective. So there are a whole lot of things, that needs to be discussed, that needs to be, considered, and we need to together, all the educationists, evolve a strategy so that our campuses are safe, the learning continues unabated. And in the light of the new national education policy, we can take the education to next level. If you really want India to be at a growth trajectory, if you want the education to be the growth engine of a country, so the onus lies on all of us stakeholders. So how we can realize the dream of Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, and how education, can play a vital role in taking our country forward. And starting from K-12 segment, starting from the elementary to the schools, to the college, to the university, to the industry, how we can ensure that the journey of students, from school to college to ultimately, whether they set up get into jobs, or set up their own startups or industry, how this entire journey can be seamless and a fruitful experience. So I'm looking forward to a lot of interesting deliberations. I'm happy to be a part of this forum, and looking forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anil sir. We are equally excited to hear your ideas on these important topics. I'll come back to you. Now, I would request Vijay sir, sir, if you can have your opening remark.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, the NEP coincided with the pandemic. Pandemic is much talked about everywhere, whether we go on TV screens, anywhere. Another thing, what we educationists should be involved in is the NEP, which is also in the air. We are on the cusp of policy and practice. Policy, I say, because it has come out in black and white, and it is to be practiced now. So the onus is on us, the educationists, how we put this into practice. The new education policy, well, gives us a feel of an overhauled cycle. The bicycle, like in the childhood, we used to have it overhauled once in a while, and when we wrote that, it used to definitely give us a thrill. So this NEP brings in a thrill of that nature to us. It has multiple features. It has a lot of good things. There could be criticism to anything, so is to this as well, but it has all the goodness, and we would discuss this in due course. Well, I would like to say the things that stand out to me here: the vocational education that has been talked about, teacher education, which is integrated and is going to be 4 years now, is another very impressive feature. And I'm really happy that this has been implemented and it is going to benefit the education world big time. In the times when degrees were bought, degrees were not having as much meaning, it is very good to have a very concrete degree for a teacher before he or she comes in to teach. And how we teach should be in a very, very, say, fun, loving manner, because what you cherish, you do well. What you do well, you cherish. So I would like to come back to it in a short while. If you want me to continue, I can do that right now or later, as you like, as the organizers.
I'll come back to you for your main talk. Big thanks, Vidukesh sir. I'm coming back to you for your main talk after this opening remark part. Thank you. We are equally honored and excited with your presence, sir. And now I would invite Sujit Khanna ma'am. And meanwhile, I must recognize the presence of Vinay Pandey sir, former headmaster with the Lawrence School, Sanavar. Welcome, Vinay sir. Thank you for joining. And now I would invite Sujit ma'am. Sujit ma'am, your opening remark, please.
Good evening, everyone, and congratulations to you, Rajul, for this platform of 150th session of Leadership Talks. You've made your platform a very roaring voice in favor of NEP, and I'm sure that's going to have positive consequences for all of us. On July 20th, 1969, Apollo 11 landed on the moon. Neil Armstrong put forward his left foot on the lunar surface and said, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." That sense of euphoria, which has remained with us over the decades since then, is similar to the euphoria I feel today after reading the power and potential of this 62-page document on India's possible future if we can be strong enough to deliver. And that's what I think is the core question in the mind of each one of us, that how can we all these stakeholders, whether we are individual educators, we are school leaders, the management, or the government, if each one of us delivers on the role that falls to our sphere of influence, I think the NEP 2020 has a great possibility of succeeding, and its success will definitely be a giant leap forward for India, with ripples that will be felt across the world for decades to come. NEP aspires to configure education. It aims at being a leveler and that spirit is very important when we look at the very disparate and marginalized world of our country as a whole, for its young learners as well as its adults. Because here, aspirations abound, but the strategies to arrive at that success, they falter, and our educational system fails to scaffold the efforts that people make. So there is a strong case for all of us to come together and not be content with our own individual islands of excellence, because I know there are countless amazing schools in India, but our perspective has to be national. And platforms such as these are important ways of understanding what strong minds in our country are thinking. And I think we can feed on each other's vision, on each other's energy, and immerse ourselves into this journey with confidence, because it will matter how we travel. Thank you so much, Raju.
Thank you, Sujit ma'am, and your proactive guidance and support has been very crucial. We value that. Big thanks for your participation. I'll be coming back to you. And now I would request Vidukesh sir, sir, if we can have your opening remark. Sir, you are on mute. And big
There's
thanks for
some
joining. Big thanks for joining.
there's some technical glitch from our side, and these are the issues of being in Northeast. That all of a sudden weather change, and and the internet will just go for a toss. Good afternoon to each one of you, and thank you very much for inviting me for such a honor to be part of 150th say talk series, and this is a great privilege and an honor to share the space with so many eminent people who are there today to share their thoughts. If I may say, like about NEP and our initial understanding of certain things, I have shared earlier also. Okay, look, any policy, especially education policies, basically manifestation of the aspiration of the country and how we aspire. The way, if you look at the earlier policies, the major focus, and that is exactly recognized in 2020 policy as well, the major focus was on access of education, that how to ensure that your education is access to the community, to the majority of the people, because that was the biggest challenge, that half of your population is not reaching a school. They haven't seen proper school. The provisions are not there, and there were so all kind of caste, in the name of caste, in the name of say certain kind of class division. People were not allowed to enter the class, say school, or all kind of stuff was happening. I think governments at that time were very mindful of that, and whatever they have done during that time was wonderful. I must say that, and that's why if you look at the inclusion in the education happened at that moment, and that was a priority, because you can't see the decisions of governments out of context. You need to place the context in place, and if you look at that context, I think the earlier governments have done a fabulous job in terms of addressing those issues. But now the NEP 2020, and I just said aspiration, already now you have made the inclusion part happened. Now after inclusion, what next? And I think the quality of education is what something this NEP is focusing on, number one. And number two, this NEP, the overall understanding, the focus is on building the human resource capital. Because what will happen gradually, that the whole world will be divided into two parts. One is have, and the second one is have not. And when we say have and have not, means the society or the segment or the big crunch which will have access, which will have kind of quality education, and some of them they didn't have that equal or equity in terms of their understanding, in terms of their say opportunities to have the quality education. And that's something, and that's how what happens before the match, before the, in fact, think about it in a bigger picture, before the match has begun, already the child has lost the match because he is in a different platform. Someone who has got into a school where all the facilities are there, where things are available to them, and where pedagogy is different, where focus is on certain things, but you are going to a place or an institution where those things are not available, and before you begin you have lost your plot. I think that's very, very important, and this NEP try to address that. And I think that's something very important when they focus on quality education, when they talk about equality, when they talk about facilities, when they talk about things for everyone. And I think in this context, as I said, it's an aspiration of the country, and everyone, each one of us has our role to play in this. And I hope that we all putting together the way this is happening, like we are deliberating and putting discourse on this, definitely be able to achieve what government wants to achieve for us. Thank you.
Absolutely. Big thanks of Vimal sir for joining and sharing these wonderful thoughts. I would be coming back to you for a detailed perspective. And now I would request Pankaj sir, sir, if you can have your opening remark.
Yeah, first of all, good afternoon to everybody. Thank you, Rajul, for creating such a wonderful environment for the platform. I think you can also write a policy, how you can implement this policy now. We have a lot of material to write that. And I also recommend that as a university, we can offer some PhD to you for that, because this policy is very good. I always heard about a lot of good things about the policy, but the important thing is how to execute that. You have a very good policy, but if execution is bad, then I think there's a lot of challenge to that. But there are few important points in this policy which co-panel they have already covered, but I just want to tell again these few points. As a higher education institute, we found that students coming from the school education almost 15 years, they have very less practical exposure. And which we try to bring, we try to give in 3 years or 4 years, whatever program they are going to pursue at our higher education system. But I think the point is vocational training at school level, which is really good. And second, this policy talk about it's a win-win for the students. Suppose you want to go for your higher education, you want to quit in between after first year, second year, third year, options are there. It is not like that once you quit after a year, you will just labeled as a college dropout. Will be given some certificate, degree. That's a very good point. And the third point is in this policy is, which is again, as ma'am suggested, it is all these schools has to come on a same platform, how we can execute as a team, because there are some schools, they are doing really good. They don't require this policy. They're already executing a lot of things at the school level. But there are some schools, really, they want a lot of implementation at their school level. So that is something which is very important, and that's all from my side. As an opening remarks are concerned, I will be talking more about the education policy and role of higher education institute in this policy, and how we can help these schools and how schools can help higher education institutes. Thank you, Raju. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pankaj sir, for your remark. Big thanks for your participation. I would be coming back to you. Now I would invite Jaswinder sir, if you can have your opening remark.
Thank you, Rajul, and congratulations for 1.5 centuries. Many more to come. I come from the EdTech background, so my focus is going to be how do we use technology, right? See, we look at NEP as a disruptive policy, but in the positive sense. We look at NEP has to achieve great heights, but for that, we need to do a lot, which seems quite difficult. My point is, how do we use technology to achieve what we have thought that may not be achievable? That's one thing. The other thing, since I come from the language background, our company is into language content development and implementation. So I'm going to talk about what new NEP has gotten. What is it that they're talking about when they talk about the 3-language system or teaching in the mother tongue during the early foundation years? So that's the area that I'm going to focus on. And I look forward to the coming sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I would be coming back to you for your detailed perspective. Big thanks for your participation and remarks. Now I would invite Sunil Dangi sir. Sunil sir, if you can have your opening remark.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Rajul, for inviting here. And we have been discussing about the new education policy quite some time, and it's great to be among the educator. I belong to the EdTech, the education technology industry, and I'm going to talk about that how I see this policy as earlier the power was more towards the parents or towards the teacher. They were who decide that what child has to study and what they have to do. Now it seems like the policy is focusing more on the student side. So now the student will be deciding that what they want to do. So now educators will have to help, and there are confusions and lots of things will arise. And I'll be discussing about how the technology can help to choose the right career at the right time. So thanks, Raju. Thanks for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunil sir. Big thanks for your participation, and I would be coming back to you for your detailed perspective. And now with this, we come to the next part of the session, which is the main talk part. I would invite all our key speakers once again for their detailed perspective. But before I invite a first speaker, I just would like to share the learnings which we have had during our last 149 sessions. During our last 149 sessions, almost every participant shared that this is a wonderful document. Everyone said like it has a potential, it is a great document, it has a potential to place India at that coveted position of Vishwa Gyan Guru. But at the same time, almost same number of participants said that execution is going to be very, very challenging. Many people, many educators, gave the example of CCE. It was also a wonderful initiative, but got failed due to poor execution. A lot of senior educators who participated shared that finance is going to be a key concern area. Many believe that teachers training is going to be a key concern area. Many educators said, yes, teachers training is going to be a key concern area, but the bigger concern area is lack of intent among teachers to get trained. A lot of people who participated shared their assessment that many good schools in urban areas already implementing these ideas or many of these ideas. The biggest challenge would be for rural school, budget school, and government schools. A lot of school leaders, education leader also said that this NEP is not talking about the autonomy, for the private institutions. So this is one area where this NEP lacks. A lot of people also said they shared their assessment that this pandemic has exposed how poor distribution we have for the digital infrastructure, and that is going to be another key challenge. So with this, I would request all our key speakers that while sharing your perspective, if you can also suggest, some ideas, some best practice which you have been implementing in your respective institution, so that all of us can learn from each other, and this session becomes more useful and engaging for all of us. I would also request that please keep the time limit in the mind for the main talk, 8 to 10 minutes per speaker, so that we have sufficient time for the questions in the end. And with this, I would invite our first speaker, Anil Gupta sir. Anil sir, if we can have your detailed perspective, over to you.
Thank you so much. So, my perspective on education or NEP or teaching from a management's perspective and as a parent's perspective, you see, everything around us is changing. Be it hospitality, aviation, industry. We are in the Industrial Revolution 4.0. So it's high time that we as edu leaders, we as the driving force of this largest K-12 segment in the world, we change the way we think, we conceive, and we deliver education in our country. Like, one of our eminent speakers said, any policy or act is as good or bad, the way it is implemented. Fine. Otherwise, all these policies and act, they become ripe. Ripe, I mean to say right intention, poor execution. Fine. So the idea is to understand, the spirit of NEP, not to just take it as a document. All right. A lot of schools, institutions, not only in India and all over the world, they have been practicing most of the provisions, which have been a part of NEP. So idea is to change the mindset, and mindset of all the stakeholders, From a teacher's perspective, we need to understand that we have to do away with this, the stereotyped and old age tradition of rote learning and memorization and getting good marks in exam. So we need to understand that it's not just about marks, it's about making a mark in life. All right. So that is what education is all about. It is all about skills. Like we were talking of vocationalization of education. So it's all about skills. It's all about aptitude. So I summarize the education as a combination of KSNA, knowledge, skills, and attitude. Fine. Unless whatever we are learning or whatever is being taught to us, we can, practice it. We can, apply that knowledge. It's of no use. And to apply the knowledge, we need to have skills. And to use the knowledge and the skills, we need to have the right kind of aptitude. Fine. So it's KSNA, talking about skills. We have, more number of doctorates in our country than graduates in America. Still, our contribution to worldwide patent is less than 1%. Everybody coming to us, they have degrees. Rather, they have multiple degrees, but they don't have skills. The industry is, bleeding. The industry is crying because they are not getting the skilled manpower, and the youth of our country, is in doldrums because they are not getting the right kind of jobs. So there is a lot of gap between the skill set of the students, graduating from the school, college, and universities, and the demand of the industry. So we need to, realign our education system. We need to restructure and reorient it to map it to the needs of the industry. We need to look into the students' further career progression, not, just limit our understanding of education to how much marks or the grades or the ranking the child is getting. Fine. So everything around education is changing. NEP talks about the bagless days. NEP talks about the vocational education. So all this, there's nothing new. Fine. Most of the conscious educationists and most of the quality schools and institutions, they are already practicing it. Fine. So we need to change our perspective. We need to understand that if the child has not learned the way we have taught, probably we have not taught the way the child would have learned. Fine. It's a time, imagine, we are still, in a state of pandemic. Imagine it was not physical lockdown, it was a digital lockdown, like what we see in the valley. Had we been able to ensure that the learning continues unabated? So the role of technology, which has transformed everything, technology has become the driver. Fine. So there's a lot, what we need to change, what we need to realign, talking from the teacher's perspective, talking about the parents' perspective, but there's so many career options now. It's not about, getting into the engineering or medical. There are whole thousands of careers, lucrative careers, much, much better than these traditional careers. Like in Punjab, most of the people, they are going for rotational crops, wheat and rice. There are so many of cash crops, so the entire mindset, needs to be changed, and it all has to percolate down from top to bottom. So it's very important to have very, very visionary, strong, skilled leadership in the schools. In fact, I had proposed to the government to set up National Institute of School Leadership, because there's no structured or formal training what the school leaders are getting. Fine. Anybody who has been into teaching for a decade or so, gets into a leadership role. Not that they're doing bad, but the needs are changing. We are expecting from the teachers and the leaders what they have not been trained for. I often say that our students, they are digital natives, and the teachers and educationists are digital immigrants. Fine. So we need to understand that it's not about marks, it's about making a mark. It's not about being a smart school, is about being a smart ecosystem. So the entire perspective, we to do away with hundreds of years of old nursery rhymes. We to do away with giving first, second, third prize to the academically bright students. Fine. So there has to be a paradigm shift in the way we think about education, and not only in terms of academics, in terms of physical and mental endurance, in terms of well-being, in terms of values. It reminds me of an anecdote, where a teacher is asking the child, okay, beta, what do you want to become in life? Like generally what we say whenever you meet kids, meet children, we ask that, what do you want to become? A child said that, ma'am, I want to become happy. Fine. The teacher again asked, beta, what do you want to become? The child says, ma'am, I want to become happy. She said, probably you do not understand the purpose of education. And the child says, ma'am, probably you don't understand the purpose of life. Fine. So it's about life skills. It's about, 21st century skills. It's about problem solving skills. It's about critical thinking skills. It's about collaborative skills. So we need to, ensure our education system, not we just talk about the skills and the vocation. We talk about, the way the education is thought about, the way education is conceived, the way education is delivered, how we are preparing the students for life, what kind of values, if there's so much of negativities in our society, we are almost 174th in a happiness index. Why is it happening? Fine. Why a small country like United Kingdom was able to rule 70 countries, which are called Commonwealth countries now? Fine. It was because of their education. It was because of their power of planning strategy. They could divide and rule. So education is not just about marks or a degree or a child graduating with some good scores from your school. It's a very, very wide perspective. We as an educationist, it might be sports, it might be technology. As I said, it might be, skills, it might be your communication skills, it might be, your ability to comprehend. It might be, your ability to, withhold some challenges, as we have seen in pandemic. So my take is that, we need to do a serious thinking. We need to re-strategize, reinvent, and rediscover the classrooms, because it's high time if you have to realize the NAP in true letter and spirit. So the entire gamut of things happening in the school has to change, right from elementary to the senior secondary. We need to, work a lot on the unlearning and relearning of teachers. We need to, equip them with all the resources, all the technology. We need to train them. We need to train them again. We need to work on the, better assessment systems. We need to work on, all these, virtual platforms, so that students, like during this pandemic time, they are hooked on to their mobiles and all these gadgets. So they are able to utilize their time, if online, in a better productive, manner. So I'm not going in a particular structure, but for me as a CEO of a 75-year-old organization, which has seen the transition from, the good old times in 1946 to the present times, where technology is the buzzword. So how do we keep pace with the changing times? How do we ensure that, the education being delivered in our school is productive, is need based, is relevant in the present context, where we say that, the world has become a globalized city. Fine, where we are talking of startups, where we are talking of, Google, where we're talking of Microsoft, where we are talking of making India, a manufacturing hub. So we have to see that what are the requirements of a country, and we have to align not only schools, like colleges, universities. We have to align, our education, our learning, our entire, delivery of this entire system, so that we are able to, handhold the child and, take that child, to his or her final destination. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your detailed and wonderful talk. You began by saying, by sharing your assessment that this NEP has a potential to take us away from that rote learning based educational system. You also talked about that it is important to making a mark in life rather than just focusing upon marks. You shared the importance of those three keywords: knowledge, skills, and aptitude, and how we need to build those important. I would say, we need to empower our kids with these three important elements. We also talked about the need to realign our education system as per the need of industry, which this NEP is also proposing. You also talked about that it is important to understand teachers and parents' perspective. You propose, as you said, like you have already spoken with government for that very much needed National School of School Leadership. We all agree with you, sir, when you said that we need to inculcate 21st century skills among our learners, and this NEP is also proposing about those things. And you shared one example that how UK rule over the the world because of its superior education system. We talked about that better assessment systems we need. We also need to teach our kids how to use technology in an effective way. So big thanks, Anil sir, for these wonderful and useful thoughts. I would be coming back to you with questions.
And we need to make our schools happy schools, right? I think that's very important.
Absolutely. So while I'll come back to you the questions, I would also ask you if you can share one thought, one idea how we can make our schools happy schools, Anil sir. So I would be coming back to you with questions. Thank you. Now I would request Vijay Datta sir, if we can have your detailed perspective, Vijay sir.
Right. Good afternoon again. We spoke briefly some time back, and as we had talked then that we'll be talking in detail sometime later. So here's what I have to say. Firstly, I said we are on the cusp of policy and practice. We have to bridge this gap between policy and practice. It simply means that we educators all the time talk about education, but hardly put it into practice. Mostly, I mean, there are, of course, a lot of good schools, like the first speaker said, where things are already happening. And NEP is talking about a lot of things which are already there in most of the good schools of the country. But still a long way to go, I would like to say. The experiential learning is, I think, very important in this regard, because we must practice what we preach. And this is what we must teach our students. Benjamin Franklin said, as you know, tell me and I forget, teach me and I will remember, involve me and I learn. So we need to involve all the stakeholders. We need to involve the teachers, we need to have the principals, and most importantly, the students on board. We need to have their participation. They must understand what's happening is for their own good. We must give them room to explore, to make mistakes, and reflect on their experiences. We must let them question, why did this happen? The inquiry-based learning has to find a very important pride of place in our curriculum. And we must give our students a fresh perspective on learning. I would like to repeat these lines which are very close to my heart, which go like this. Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach him how to fish and you feed him for life. It is very important that we teach our students things that are going to stand them in good stead. And teaching alone is not enough. It should be in a manner that stays with the child, and the child really feels that he or she is benefiting from what is happening. Otherwise, like Mark Twain said, that I did not let my schooling interfere with my education. It should not happen like this with the students of today. And how can that happen? The experiential learning I talked about, and all this can happen is when the child finds interest in what he or she is learning. The fun courses are very important in this regard, which are mentioned in the NEP. And to talk of the fun courses, I would like to first of all, like to talk about the vocational training, which has been given the pride of place in the new education policy, which is indeed a very nice step. It takes you to the real world. It takes you to the real world jobs, and job specific skills are given out to the students, which stay with them through their life. The NEP also talks about the languages, learning more than one language, more than two languages. Multilingualism, as we call it, is again a very good idea. And like Bob Dylan says, I learned Sanskrit and Arabic to improve my mind. When one learns more than one or two or three languages, the mind gets an exercise and it becomes more receptive. Then another very, very important feature of all this is of the curriculum that the NEP is advocating about is the art integrated learning. The art integration is very, very important, and this is another step towards experiential learning. I'll come back to it in detail in a while. Apart from this, the Indian traditional games, the hopscotch, and the other games that were played, the marbles, all of them had a value in them, and they should be brought back like the NEP has very correctly talked about. So I would now like to move into detail of some of these topics that I have briefly touched upon. The art integration, like I said, is very much to do with the experiential learning, and it is a step towards the multidisciplinary teaching and learning transaction that we always talk about. We talk about the multidisciplinary links between subjects, topics, and here you are linking it to real life. You are linking what you're teaching to what is in the real life. And we have this in our school going a thing called apply it now. You learn something, you gain some knowledge, and how you use it, you have to tell, we are teaching you something that is going to stand you in good stead, and you are going to apply that knowledge and show us in a practical form, how do you think it was of use? The NCF, the National Curriculum Framework 2005, had recommended this a bit, the art as a subject, but it was not taken to the extent that you find in the new education policy. The four spheres, the music, dance, visual arts, and theater were talked about, but not to the extent that you find in the new education policy, which enhances the importance of creativity and critical thinking, problem solving to a greater degree. It also brings to the fore the curriculum, brings to the fore the interdisciplinary approach in which you have integrated so many knowledge and skills together. I'll come back to that in a while. I'd like to move on to the next feature of art integration, that is smaller things like the culinary art, the crops, the spices grown in India, good agricultural practices, pesticides, how is oil extracted from seeds. These kind of finer points should be taken into account. Well, talking of making education interesting, there are so many ideas that we educationists have, but we need to implement them when we teach. The Nukkad Nataks, they can teach and depict mitosis and meiosis. The metals journey of combination can be taught by role plays. Each child can choose to be sun, moon, and they can demonstrate what is an eclipse. What does an eclipse mean by pretending to be planets? And in a role play fashion, do this in the classrooms. When they themselves play these various roles, say somebody has been moon, somebody has been sun, they moved around and they explained what is an eclipse, that will remain through their life etched in their memory, that I was this, acted as sun, he acted as moon, and she was the earth. And that's how we moved, and that's how the eclipse happened. So these kind of things are the things that we need to, as educationists, talk about. Because what happens is we talk at a very superficial level, and these things don't get translated on ground, which is a pity. Experiential learning and turning this education policy on ground, having it going on ground, to have it hitting the ground straight away is very, very important. So many other things can be taught by the role plays, and in a very, say, interesting manner, in a very enjoyable and engaging manner, we can teach so many of important complex concepts, I should say. Say, for example, in chemistry, each child can become an element or compound, and then they mingle or don't mingle. So they would remember that I was this compound, I was this element, and the teacher said, no, you cannot mingle with that, or you can only mingle with that element or compound. So these things can be taught in a manner that will stay with them through their life. And like I said, doesn't happen what happened with Mark Twain, who says that I did not let my schooling interfere with my education. The education should stay with children through their life. Knowledge is to be connected to the life outside the school and the real life situations. Of course, this has become a rhetoric. There should be no rote learning. That is very well repeated, and that, of course, stays. But we need to go beyond this. Assessment, as far as that is concerned, it should be for learning and not of learning. We must plan our assessment in a manner that we see what the child has understood and what has he not, and focus on teaching further what a student has not understood. Knowledge, to be distinguished from information, we have to go for the conceptual knowledge, and that is very, very important. Well, there has to be unity of command if you are to teach that. A commerce concept. You can teach that by somebody role playing as a domestic help and taking instruction only from one person in the house as opposed to everyone. So this is something which is, I feel, very important to be part of the curriculum, and that will going to make education to be really integrated. The importance of visual arts has to be kept in mind. Music, dance, and theater is not just something which is to be taken very lightly. There is a purpose of doing all this. The local arts, handicrafts, fairs, festivals, dances, music, food, everything should be taught and related to something which is more profound. Well, the status and role of arts and health and physical education needs to be really uplifted, like this new NEP is doing. The NEP is uplifting the status of the visual arts, where all that we do in our schools is given a pride of place in the real life. The NEP also talks about the holistic education, which is very important, whereas not just the academics, but the co-curricular, the games also get equal attention. And it can be done in a very disciplined way, where children are taught self-discipline, creativity gets, of course, the center stage, and there is intrinsic motivation of the students. Intrinsic motivation, until that is there, the education cannot be complete. The child needs to understand why he or she has been taught what is being taught. As the previous speaker correctly talked about the learning, unlearning, and relearning, that is, of course, that goes on not just with the students, but also with the teachers. And the focus in the curriculum, like I said, I repeat, should be on conceptual learning. We know that students learn by taking what they know and then building on it. That brings me to the curriculum concept of constructivism. You know, each child, when he or she builds up knowledge, conceptual knowledge in his or her own mind, that is what is going to benefit him or her, to the student, maximum. So constructivism needs to be very, very important part of the curriculum when we help them learn, rather than just tell them to rote learn or remember something as it is without questioning. So inquiry-based learning is another thing I would like to briefly talk about here when I talk about the curriculum. The life skills that was talked about suddenly has faded away. It should not be like this. There was value in it, and the goodness of it should be kept. We must not throw the baby out with the bath water. The goodness of the life skills must stay on. All that, of course, critical thinking, creative thinking, decision making, it goes on, the 10 life skills we are all familiar with. But we talk of them in isolation. We talk of critical thinking, creative thinking, but tend to forget something as important as empathy. Emotional intelligence is very, very important as the self-awareness building skills are.
Right.
That help us even to cope with stress in life. Once one understands the emotions, one's own emotions, then one can cope with stress in a better manner. The scientific attitude, again, is a very important feature, and we must inculcate as much possible. The current gentleman who headed the NEP is and has been an ISRO head. So he brings in the scientific attitude, the spirit of curiosity, objectivity, creativity, precision, willingness to change, opinion, aversion to superstition, a thirst for knowledge, empathy for human conditions with him into the NEP. The components of scientific attitude scale, like you know, the cause and effect relationship, curiosity, open-mindedness, aversion to superstition, intellectual honesty, suspended judgment, and environmental concerns are each of them subjects in themselves and need to be trained. Students need to be trained in each one of these. Environmental concerns, of course, is very, very important. The pollution is increasing by the day. And unless we take remedial measures, it will not be us easy to get rid of it, I should say.
Absolutely.
Well, how much time would you like me to speak at this?
I would request you to conclude, sir, because we have already.
Right. So I would like to just conclude by saying that we must take this NEP very seriously, and we must implement it. That is what is more important. Printed matter, if it stays on our desks, I think doesn't make sense. It has to translate on ground. Students need to benefit, and I'm sure by such conferences, we are going to make sure that everything translates to the ground and that the students benefit immensely by such efforts. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Big thanks, Vijay sir, for these very useful points you have raised. You began by assessing the importance of experiential learning. You talked about why we need inquiry-based learning, and NEP is also making a strong attempt in that direction. You also talked about why it is important to teach our students skills which stays with them forever. And you shared your assessment that the focus of NEP on vocational education is very, very important step. It is going to have a huge impact. You also talked about why learning more languages and how it empowers human beings. You also talked about that art integration is a laudable proposal from NEP. And you shared your assessment that NEP has formally recognized the importance of interdisciplinary approach, among others. You called upon all the educators that we need to adopt practical, engaging, ways like role plays, which can be used while teaching to make that real impact on ground. You also talked about why we need to have assessment for learning, not of learning. You also talked about the importance of visual arts, and you said as your assessment that NEP is making a very strong attempt for achieving the holistic education. And then in the end, you talked about and called upon all the educators that we must work in collaboration in order to execute this NEP successfully. So big thanks, Vijay sir, for your participation and wonderful remarks. I would come back to you with questions, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I would request and invite Sujit ma'am. Ma'am, if we can have your detailed perspective.
Thank you, Rajul. Every time I've read the NEP, I have found one more layer unraveling itself to reveal something new that I had missed earlier. And so I am convinced that not just me, but my entire team of teachers will need to read, and reread this document in order to understand it well before we can be ready to make a good use of it like we must. And some of the very important focus points in conversations that we've had so far have been on relearning, unlearning, constructivism, changing our mindset. And like Jaswinder sir said, this is a disruption. And every disruption is an opportunity, I feel. And therefore, it will be important for us to maximize our gains. I do believe that every interpreter of the national policy at every school level will create a universe, a separate universe of understanding about it and the plan of action for it. And that's perfectly fine, because we do not have to have an entirely similar perspective to how this policy must come true for our school. And it's going to be a road less traveled by for each one of us, and which is fine. And the differences will be very, very marked. But so long as we are arriving at the same point of destination with a similar ethos guiding us of our national development, I think we will do fine. So we do not really have to over worry about being clones of anybody, and feel quite confident about being independent in our perspective, but being correct in our perspective. You asked for a perspective as per your individual school. So that's what I'm going to focus on rather than the policy itself, because I think we've had amazing insights into the policy so far. At DPS Greater Faridabad, we consider ourselves a progressive school, and happiness in the school environment, in everything we think and do, is really a high priority for us. Faridabad is a very, very academic city. And when we opened the school in 2013 with a curriculum that wasn't aiming at JEE and NEET stars, but positive, progressive, confident, and versatile children, people felt that we were making a mistake. But now, 7 years down the line, this has become our greatest achievement. The acceptance by the city that the whole child deserves to be nurtured, not just academic inclination towards a couple of examinations. At DPS GF, we have teacher teams driving the academics and the student leadership actualizing what the teachers are endeavoring to achieve. So it's a two-pronged leadership here. Every teacher matters, and we listen to every student, and we really do. And as a result, when I look at the NEP and I look at our school, I do find some points which are absolutely in sync. And let me just very in brief capture them for you. Early years have been a priority for us right from the very start, and that's going to continue. Our programs like Know Your Root and are great for India Connect, Be the Change and Child Rights Program for SDG awareness and action, personal development clubs for multidimensional student growth, research-based cultural projects, and 100% participation by all students of classes nursery to 9 and 11. And I mean that all students in mega productions and events, programs of Happitude Together for collaboration with neighborhood government schools, our international collaborations, our merit-based scholarship, and our ATL for scientific inquiry. We've just day before yesterday sent 26 projects for the ATL marathon, and the innovators are from class 6 onwards. Mindbox for IT creativity, Mindspark for personalized mathematical growth, and our school is an art gallery in movement. I mean, the entire school is beautifully organized with artwork done by teachers and students. And last year when the NEP came, there was so much of excitement about let's get started, let's do something. So we started with the Ek Bharat Shresht Bharat program in collaboration with a couple of schools from Telangana, because Haryana and Telangana were teamed up by the government of India. And dear colleagues, I'm delighted to share that this was an absolutely wonderful joint exercise in discovering our country and discovering the ability of students to connect with each other and to respect each other across the distance and culture disparity that we may have in our country. I count this project as one of the greatest achievements of our pandemic year. And it's very, very heartening, because these are some of the things we would like to continue for the further progress of India Connect as such. Now, what is the way forward for a school which feels that, we are not too bad? There is plenty, I feel, Raju. There is just absolutely plenty. And that plenty will require all of us, every teacher, every student, and every parent of the school, to look at things with a very honest and critical way, because we are doing well, but by no means one can say that there isn't a scope for greater effort or greater improvement. And I'm pointing out some of the areas that we will focus on, because I believe that other schools might benefit by knowing that what one school is working towards could be perhaps useful for another school. We need to awaken the connection between the curriculum being transacted at school every day across every subject by every teacher for every learner, with their overall growth and the goals of NEP and the growth of India. Right now, it is, okay, I'm in class 5, I got to do well in class 5. Oh, today is an assessment, I need to do well in that assessment. But how does grade 5 and how does the Monday test connect with the overall development and places you in sync with national goals? That is something we need to emphasize and understand better. We need to strengthen our vocational education. Mr. Gupta talked about the right aptitude and attitude, and I agree that vocational education and in its very, very efficient and comprehensive way can achieve wonderful gains for us. We need to continue integrating technology with versatility and ethics. Ethics is something that is coming to my mind more and more as very, very relevant. Nobody is scared of technology anymore. But in becoming a confident user of technology, are you becoming an ethical user too? Are you taking ethics as your responsibility? Because there is a dark world out there, and there can be irresponsibility towards others, which can damage and hurt and destroy lives. So I think we are looking to be technologically strong, but not ethically weak. We need to get a greater focus on health and mental wellness as essential for sound education. This is an area which is not really a high priority with many schools. We all assume that everything is wonderful with our students and everything is great with our teachers in terms of their mental wellness, but this is actually not the truth. You probe a little deeper and you find so many areas where support is required. So I think a greater understanding of this area will be a step in the right direction for every school. We need to expand the base for sharing our school resources with other schools. We right now do so with Alika, Badoli, and Palla schools of the government, but I think we need to make a list and find out which are the schools which can very, very conveniently collaborate with us at local level, and take the initiative to reach out and convince them that it'll be wonderful to forge friendships of varied kind. And I intend that we do this more determined kind of a mode with our program of Happitude Together. We need to explore new forms of assessment, because NEP gives you that freedom. It encourages you to look at assessment from a very, very open and liberal perspective. So we are already talking of my project, my way, that one project that a student chooses, which can work as a replacement for the score of any Monday test that you feel you haven't done well. We are looking at possibility of projects which are peer assessment based, and even some activities which are based on parent or family assessment of your performance. So we are trying to look at possibilities which go beyond the examination aspect to make everybody partner in the growth of everybody else. And we are looking at more and more conversations which will help us to redefine and reshape the roles of everyone at school. Over the 7 years, we have changed our mission and vision policy 3 times, as we have felt that we were evolving and shifting our focus. And I think each school will need to sit down and look anew with greater honesty and vision at what are the possible directions that the school would like to travel on, and see that it stands like an epitome of value systems that it has accepted as its challenges and areas for very, very determined growth. I also like some of the promises of NEP, the institutional promises, when it talks about Parak, or it talks of the NTA Common Aptitude Test, or it talks of the National Curriculum Framework for Teachers, National Achievement Survey, etc. And I think that all these will definitely add to the overall reach and effectiveness and efficiency of the NEP. And I think most importantly, we all need to understand that this is just the beginning. You even haven't touched alphabet A properly. And it's a long list of alphabets to go through. And the policy will evolve. It will help you to evolve. And so you shouldn't be scared of change. You shouldn't be scared of failure. And you shouldn't take any kind of deterrent as final for you. The overriding sentiment for me at DPS Greater Faridabad will be that no child should fall through the sieve. And we got to have strong hands beneath the sieve so that we can lift the child back just in case this happens. But more importantly, prevent a child from falling through. These are some of my thoughts, Rajul, on the NEP and my school, DPS Greater Faridabad. I hope they will be of some value. Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely, absolutely. These are very, very valuable points you have raised. You shared a lot of best practices so that all we can learn. You talked about that we need to adopt the student-centric approach. We need to have that. You gave your example, in your school where teachers drive the entire academic. You also talked about the India's rich heritage and why we need to explore that. You gave another good example, like India Connect program, which you have been running. And then you called upon all of us that we must, empower all of our learners with technology, but we must make sure that we are not ethically weak. So we must focus upon both sides. NEP is also proposing that way. You also talked about the importance of health and mental wellness, which is another very, very important, I would say, area in 2021. And NEP is also focused about that. You talked about various innovative projects like My Project, My Way at your school. You talked about the importance of peer assessment, family friends assessment. You talked about wonderful initiatives in NEP like Parak, National Testing Agency, NCA for Teachers. And then you called upon all the educators, all the fellow school leaders that we must work in collaboration. Collaboration certainly helps each other by exchanging learnings and notes. You talked about that we must work upon NEP in collaboration. NEP will certainly evolve with time. So big thanks, Sujit ma'am, for these valuable points. I would come back to you with questions. Thank you for your participation. Now, I would invite Vidukesh, sir, over to you. We can have your detailed perspective.
Rachul, before I start, may I just ask, because I'm a little doubtful, how many minutes I have?
Sir, 10 minutes.
Okay, great. I think
I just must recognize the presence of a very senior education leader from Northeast only, Dilip Kumar sir from Star Public School, Meghalaya. Join us. Welcome, Dilip sir. And Sanjay Yadav sir from Elcon International School, Delhi. Vidukesh sir, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Rajul. Thank you very much. Okay, let me begin by what I said in my opening remark, that any document is A, aspiration, and B is contextual. We need to understand this document in these two important words, I'll say, context and the aspiration. So now let's think about it. And the best part about this particular document is also identifies in the context the problems which we are facing. And this document then tries to give you some of the solutions to those problems. May I just take the context first? So when Macaulay's policy was say adopted that time, taken, and then we have developed our education system. Our modern education system is what Macaulay's proposed, and before independence. And somehow, when we started our journey as an independent country, as I said, the context was that access of education to everyone, that everyone